Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us today for another live session with PRPOI. I'm your host Tarunjit Ratan, and I'm delighted to welcome you to this episode on a conversation we all possibly have had several times with our clients in a year, especially during renewal. Today, we talk about the Holy Grail, PR measurement, the conversation to have. This was always a bone of contention between clients and agencies. Several discussions, seminars, conferences later, we are yet to arrive at a common ROI evaluation method that a majority of the industry agrees on. So, we all agree that AVE is not the way. But then what is? With the rapid evolution that took place since 2020, I think PR has taken on more job roles, leading to a pressing requirement for a more comprehensive method of evaluation of work put in by PR and COPCOM departments. Today, to get the discussion started, we speak to industry veterans on a frank chat on the possibility of creating a method that we could all, or a majority, could agree upon. Before I introduce the panelists, would like to give a shout out to our excellent content curators Sonali Sukhal and Pooja Trehan, who helped put this together. So let's start. We will start by adding Vineet Handa, right? He's the founder and CEO of Kaizen and also the North Chapter chairperson for PRCAI. Let me add him on. Hey, Vineet.
Let me
Vineet, you're
unmute.
on mute.
Hi, guys. Hey, Tarun. Good afternoon. And thanks for having me here on PRPI and one of my favorite topics. Thank you.
Absolutely. We are delighted to have you here with us. So, for the benefit of our audience, a little bit more about Vineet. He has been in the field for over 2 decades now, and in fact, started with ABCL way back in 1997. He brings to this conversation a rich experience in PR, operation, investment, business development, with a vast experience in management. At various stages of his career, Vineet has projected great responsibility and expertise in helping prestigious clients and brands for various companies. That also included having the PR ROI conversation, I'm assuming, several times. Yeah. I'll
Every
also
day.
add,
Every day.
it's an everyday conversation.
True. Yeah.
Yeah. We also have with us today Siddharth Mukherjee, founder of Brand Balance, a very unique agency that defines itself as a measurement service provider. Siddharth is of the view that PR for PR is possible only with the help of PR measurement and data analytics. It is the main catalyst for the growth of the industry. Not only that, if applied well, scientific PR measurement can double the growth rate of the industry. Intrigued? Let's find out more from Siddharth as he shares his perspective and learnings from over 23 years of work experience that includes forefronting research, data analytics, corporate communication, as well as several agency growth stories. Welcome, Siddharth. Welcome to the panel.
Hi guys, hi Tarun, hi Vineet. Good to be here.
Hi, Siddharth. Welcome.
We we also have Preeti joining us. She will join us momentarily. Yeah. So we'll start the discussion. Before we get onto the subject, I will take a few minutes to help our audience understand your association with the PR industry. Vineet, we'll start with you. With over 2 decades of working with iconic brands, what still keeps you here in the industry?
So I missed you in between. Is it my?
Can you hear us? Can you hear us?
This is for me, right, Tarun? That question was for me, right? Okay. So I don't know if I would have done anything else other than the PR. However, the PR, I wrote one blog. The only blog which I wrote till date was my entry into PR. That was PR by chance. And yeah, but the point is, uh, when once you are in PR, do you have time to think anything else? I don't think so. This is so exciting. The whole journey, last 2 decades, has been very, very exciting. Every day, you don't have a new challenge, you have new challenges. And when you work with multiple clients, those challenges are also multiple, and that's how you keep on going. Guys, I just would want to say, when the whole world was struggling with the pandemic, the only industry which kept on going, the only industry which still grew. uh, at least I'm not means healthcare is another part, but some parts of healthcare industry, but PR. And that's one thing which I definitely want to speak about. We all have grown during this time. We also have done tremendously well by keeping things moving, in the sense, the clients keeping their heads up. We kept finding innovative ways to reach out to the large audience, whether it is for the cause or for the business cause. So all of that.
They'll be
Apart from
joining
that,
us
if
in a
you really
bit.
look at, sorry, Tarun, are you? Am I audible? Is there any challenge out there with the network? Siddharth, can you hear me? Fine.
I can hear you. I can hear you.
Oh, perfect, perfect. So I think, just to continue on that, though, uh, uh, as far as my PR journey is concerned, it has been only one word which I could talk about: satisfying and fruitful. And I think now
I
Tarun's
think we've lost
connectivity looks
Tarun. Yeah.
difficult. I believe, Siddharth, this would be the question to you too.
No,
Yes.
we have a
So
different question for Siddharth.
okay,
Yeah.
go ahead, Tarun.
I think Tarun's also facing the connectivity problem. That she told me that somewhere it's shaky. The network is shaky for her.
Can you hear me, Siddharth?
Yes, I can. Now I can hear you. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. How did you decide to get into this niche? Because yours is a very unique vertical that you've decided to kind of focus on.
So, Tanu, it's a very interesting question because if you look at my last 23 years of work experience in the industry, I've had the privilege to work on the agency side. I've had the privilege to work on the Corpcom side. And when I worked in these two areas, what kind of struck me was that public relations is a very, very powerful tool. It's a very, very powerful tool. And but the problem is that public relations as an industry or public relations as a tool is not being able to really show its impact on not just brand, but I would say even to the extent of the balance sheet. And I believe
Right.
that public relations makes a huge impact on the asset side and the liability side of the balance sheet. But there has not been much work which has gone into showcasing how public relations is actually showing its impact on the asset side and on the liability side. And this is where the huge gap is. And I think this is where probably the top management or the C suite, they've still not realized the power that public relations really brings in. And which is where I thought that why don't I get into the analytics space, the data space, the measurement space?
Right.
And which is where I think out of my 23 odd years of experience, I think 15 years I happened to get a lot of opportunity to work with a lot of data measurement, media measurement, PR measurement, advertising research, market research, etc. And I that kind and the more the work I did, I kind of got convinced that public relations can be supported with a lot of data. And today, for me, PR for PR can happen only with the help of data, not with seminars, not with conferences. PR for PR can happen only with data, and there is tremendous opportunity to showcase the work that PR agencies are doing, corporate communication fields are doing, and how it is showing an impact on the balance sheet, not just the brand or not just in terms of share of voice. Yeah.
That's brilliant. You chose a very, difficult subject that's, let's say, been a lot cause of a lot of heartache between agencies, clients, and like you rightly termed, a lot of divorces between brands and agencies, right? So let's get into the topic, right? What is PR measurement to you? And are we confusing PR monitoring with measurement? Is there a difference or are they the same? Siddharth, would you like you to
Yes.
answer this first before Vineet jumps in?
Yes. Yes. I think before we start answering the difference, I think let's understand that the basic purpose of PR or any communication starts with the question of why am I doing this particular communication activity? whether it's a press release activity, whether it's an authored article activity, whether it's a press conference activity, whether it's a roadshow activity, whether it's an investor relations, employee relations, any kind of activity, the answer that we should start asking is that why am I doing this? What is it that I'm going to create as a benefit for my brand and for my business? Now, unfortunately, uh, uh, our industry has not had the wherewithal or the bandwidth or the ammunition to showcase to the top management that this is the impact I'm creating on the brand and the business. Now having said this, what is the difference between monitoring and measurement? Monitoring to me is a very integral subset of a huge ocean called measurement. So you start your measurement journey with monitoring. But my experience has shown me that most of the cases, I would say 9 out of 10 companies or 9 out of 10 agencies, they are kind of stuck for whatever reason with monitoring, and they are calling that as measurement. Now, what do we mean by monitoring? Monitoring to me would be typically what we all consume starting early, say 7 a.m., 8 a.m. in the morning. The news trackers, right? Everyday news trackers, competition में क्या हो रहा है, मैं क्या कर रहा हूँ, कहाँ कहाँ मेरा coverage आया है, right? Or even the end of the month analysis that you do, whether it's a share of voice, whether it's a tonality, whether it's a geographic breakup, किस journalist ने मेरे बारे में लिखा, who did not write about me, what, how did my spokesperson, how do my client spokesperson stack up against competition spokesperson, etc. All these are actually different qualitative analytics under the realm of monitoring. It is not really measurement. Measurement comes in where you are able to answer that itna sab kuch karne ke baad, what was the outcome that I was able to create for the brand and for the business. Now that has been one area which is something which is a huge potential, and the moment public relations industry is able to step in this area, I think sky would be the limit.
Absolutely. And Vineet would like you to weigh in on that. But before that, we have a third panelist, Preeti Binoy, join us. Quick introduction about Preeti. Preeti heads the corporate communication and government affairs at Kimberly Clark and has over 21 years of experience across PR, issues, crisis management, and advertising. She's been working with large corporate enterprises, consumer brands, helping them devise a lot of integrated communication strategies. Her perspective, I think, to this conversation today will be invaluable. Welcome, Preeti. Welcome to the panel.
Hi, Preeti.
Thank you, Tarun. Hi, Siddharth. Hi, Vineet. Apologies. This is one of those times, I think, in the lives of us PR professionals when crisis doesn't seem to be letting go of us. So technology this time played bad sport, if I would say. But pleasure, Tarun, to be here on a panel with Vineet and Siddhartha. And thanks for having me here.
Absolutely. I think we are pros at handling crisis,
Welcome,
if
Preeti.
nothing else. All in a
Thanks,
day's
Vineet.
work. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Vineet would like you to weigh in on the PR measurement versus, PR monitoring conversation.
So it's a very interesting way to put and the way Siddharth described the measurement versus monitoring, and how
Right.
we not only the client side but also as a PR agency, people confuse between these two. Uh, and the way I really put this out is, I'm a strong believer that one size doesn't fit all.
Right.
So, what is measurement? Measurement is a very soft side of it. A measurement, and I'll start with an anecdote. Uh, so we have a large, a law firm as our client, and one of the top partners of that company firm wrote an article. This was around 6 months back on one particular topic of GST, and uh, you know it went into business standard online
Hmm.
alone, only online space. And the next review meeting, I was told by that partner that, hey, that was amazing placement, it was a great timing, because I got two CFOs calling me after that, reading that article. Now, for me and for him or for that firm, that is that is the outcome, right? And that is the measurement. now
Right.
now going a little back around this whole topic of, you know now, even if I give them those 100 articles in a quarter, the measurement or the result of those two articles or those two calls is definitely you can't match rest of all
Right.
numbers. So coming back to the topic of monitoring versus measurement, and I feel measurement is whatever you do, the best of numbers, best of the competition mapping, best of showing share of voice, and then especially in today's time when we're really looking at the traditional, which is print, traditional, which is online, and the social space. The whole line, the boundaries are thinning, and therefore this whole discussion around, on the measurement side is also is also overlapping all these areas. And therefore, it becomes more important for agencies to bring those clarities. For an example, now, again, and I'm sorry, I would have a lot of these anecdotes coming, just put things in perspective. uh, we announced Deepika Padukone as a brand ambassador for Adidas just 2 days back.
Right.
On the first day itself, this is the third day of that announcement. So first day we had around 1,400 conversation across digital platform. Now when we really deep dive into it, and Siddhartha, to your point, at least 50% or more than 50% conversations were happening through the media or the journalists who have started tweeting and talking about it.
Yeah.
Now,
Mhm.
when we really look at, Deepika was trending in Asia at top 10 on Google trending. So there are a lot of these things which were happening. But is it something which is to be done with the digital side of it? And honestly, we only have a PR mandate. We do not have a digital mandate for Adidas. So keeping all of that in mind, now the other thing which happened is at least four or five A&M media platform, including Brand Equity, Campaign India, Exchange for Media, Agency Reporter, and I think one more, couple of more. They did this breaking news newsletters. Now,
Right.
just imagine a breaking news newsletters going on a topic like this. There is so much of softer side to it. Will I be able to ever measure the outcome of those news web mailer? I don't think I will get that data ever from these platforms, that how many people have sort of opened that mailer or seen that mailer, but the whole perception side. So now coming back to this whole measurement and monitoring. I think monitoring
Mhm.
is the core. That is what mostly people understand as a measurement. But I feel measurement is a very very soft, very very soft side of it. And for each company, each person, it is different.
Okay,
For
understood.
an example, and
So,
Preeti,
for example, I've understood
I'll
from
just finish.
Siddharth and you that PR measurement and PR monitoring are different. Let me throw another term in the mix here. PR ROI, right?
Yeah,
Is it
yeah,
an
go ahead.
interchangeable term with PR measurement or PR monitoring, or does it encompass both of them? Because I know for a lot of, when it comes to a lot of renewals, a lot of agencies and corporate communication departments are asked to justify what is the PR ROI for us. Yeah, is this an interchangeable term, or is this something that encompasses both of it? Preeti, would you want to weigh in first?
Thanks, Tarun, for that question. And thanks, Vineet, for setting the tone because you definitely have thrown in a lot of valuable nuggets. And I think I'll go with spinning your question from the perspective of a brand marketer because, that's where a lot of corporate communications professionals get questioned on ROI, right? Because when you
Right.
look at the corporate aspects, there are multiple aspects to handling PR in the corporate, right? And crisis becomes a bigger piece over there. So you don't really get those questions there. But as marketers, whom you need to deal with on a regular basis to enhance brand perception, you definitely get asked, okay, fine, you tell me what's been the ROI through PR for me, right? And
Hmm.
in my 21 years career, I must say there was this one fantastic old saying which I used to keep hearing time and again by a lot of marketers, which traditionally used to be, I waste half my marketing budget, Preeti. I just want to know which is that half. And I think that half that I'm talking about wastage is possibly PR. And I used to be, why do you think that? He said, how would you measure it? And that's where the biggest question arises, right? To Vineet's point, we talk of AVEs and we use AVEs. We still do. And I would say, working for a multinational company, I'm still using AVEs. But we are graduating, right? And that's when I used to sit down and ask myself a question to say that, is the problem in the tool or the way we are taking the engagement, right? Why should a PR person be using advertising value equivalency? Why can't it be earned value equivalency? That changes the game completely, then, right? Because it changes the mindset as well. And that's possibly what really will help you justify also to marketers, if need be, to say the return on an investment that you got from your brand was through earned media. Because that's the whole difference in education that you really need to create with marketers, right? And that's been one change I've been trying to ensure that I'm able to take forward, because everybody comes with old school, right? And they still believe that advertising value, advertising spends is equal to return on investments. But
Right.
can possibly PR champion that? Yes, they can. Today there are so many platforms where PR has really moved far and beyond, right? And the fine example of Adidas that Vineet just bought out, I think it's a fantastic piece of PR campaigns, right? I was just reading the Bombay Times story this morning, and it really caught my attention to say that, oh wow, husband and wife both brand ambassadors for Adidas now. So, the
Brilliant.
whole change I think really needs to happen, where we don't deep dive and say what is ROI. I think the change in the way ROI is measured for PR, that's the first step that is needed.
Okay, so you both have brought in a very interesting point, when you talk about measurement in that sense, right? Now, when Vineet was talking about the digital aspect of it, in the last 5 years, I think there have been a lot of spate of tools that have come into the market, which are being sold to a lot of agencies, talking about, listening tools. But in a country like India, which is still very print heavy, television heavy, right? Somewhere it falls short, right? So, is there some standardized tool that can be used? And Siddharth, can you weigh in on that as well? In terms of, is there a affordable tool that, let's say, a majority of the agencies can use, a majority of the brands can use to be able to, arrive at a common method of agreement saying that this is how we will evaluate PR ROI?
Should I go in?
Yes, Siddharth.
Yeah, okay. So I think before I touch upon that, I just wanted to add my perspective on this entire thing of ROI, AVs, etc. My experience has made me conclude that AVs today is the biggest cancer for the industry. Right? AV is a cancer. But the sad part is that despite the fact that we know about this somewhere at the back of our minds, this is the core area of discussion between us and our clients. Clients discuss on the same parameter, agencies discuss on the same parameter. And I'm not sure if anything is being done at a war footing to apply some chemotherapy and eradicate this cancer. Right? Now, and my belief is that if AVs continue, PR will continue to be where it is, and forget about PR for PR, right? Nothing's going to happen there. So AV is one of the first thing that's need to be eradicated. Coming back to when we say returns on investment, I think in the world of communication, I don't think we are still, forget about public relations. And given the fact that I've dealt with a lot of data outside public relations also, even for example, a much more established industry like advertising, still cannot still cannot say that we bring in ROI. What a communication can bring in is ROO, which is returns on objective, right? Because ROI is all about transaction, right? Objective is कि मैंने किस लिए ये communication किया है. Has it been able to change the perception, or has it been able to sustain the perception? Whether it's an employee, whether it's a customer, whether it's a government, whichever is the target audience. So I think for us, when we say returns, it is about returns on objective. No communication can go beyond the point and say that हमने आपको ROI ला के दिया. It is all about ROI. That's the first point. Now, there are many ways in establishing that have I been able to achieve the ROO. And here, if I can only say that one of the very simplest of practices that PR and corporate communication industry can do is that it should invest heavily on the concept of primary research, because the objective of ROO comes in only when you're investing in primary research. So far,
Right.
for the last 30, 40 years of our industry, we have been focusing on secondary research, which is media monitor करके देख लो. But उसका outcome क्या हुआ? Perception change हुआ कि नहीं? Recall बढ़ा कि नहीं? Recall generate हुआ कि नहीं? So I think what our industry needs is a very close dependency or use of primary research. Now, today I do know that individual agencies have their a small setup of primary research at the back end. Now, that's fine, but the thing is that are we using standard scientific tools of primary research? And there are many ways of setting that up. Right. Now coming to your question of sorry, Tarun, you just need to repeat if you can just repeat the question one more time. You had the specific question for me.
On tools and affordability.
On the tool, yes. And now on tools, there are today, for example, when you talk about primary research, today, media monitoring, there are plenty of service providers, right? There are plenty. Now, if I may say, there is no harm in having multiple service providers, but I think there should be some amount of standardization. So, a while back, Vineet spoke of that, look, no, not one size fits all. Absolutely agreed. But there is one first layer of output which has to be standardized. There can be always a last mile customization. So, for example, I'm giving you a very simple example. For ages now, we've been using count of articles as one of the yardsticks to monitor and measure.
Right.
Now, my experience shows you, and I can prove it to you, that count of articles से अगर आप share of voice निकालते हो, that does not mean it's good PR, right? So, for example, if you got a share of voice rank 1 based on count of articles, there is no guarantee that the PR is good and PR is effective to the company. Same way, based on count of articles, if your share of voice rank is number 5, there is not, we cannot say that it is bad PR. For all you know, it has been effective. So it's vice versa. So the quality or the unit of measurement that we use to define PR or to qualify PR has to be. So today, for example, there are various ways in which you can actually create quantitative parameters and qualitative parameters to arrive at the unit of measurement. Ki what is the unit of measurement that I'm going to use to arrive at share of voice, to arrive at tonality, to arrive at sentimental, key message hit ratio, etc., etc.
Okay.
So, so that's one. Yeah. Sorry. Go ahead.
So that's interesting. So how is it that this method of evaluation is not taught in colleges or not shared with the industry at large? Vineet, I want to address this conversation to you, this particular point to you. You're a part of PRCAI, right? How is it that we are still having this conversation today? Why is it not this not standardized method that is being shared with every agency out there? There's a similar question that's coming from one of our audiences. Vineet, can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you now. Sorry. Can you please repeat the question? Sorry.
Okay, so Siddharth spoke about a standardized method, right?
True.
Uh,
Yeah.
why is it that this standardized method is, not available to all agencies or not taught in colleges? And why is it that you're a member of PRCAI, right? Why is it that the apex body, one of the apex bodies of our country, is not sharing this with everyone?
So,
Why are we still having this
so I
conversation
think,
today?
yeah. So I'll tell you there are two very important aspects which Siddharth also spoke about what is that standardized method. So there are three aspects which I'll bring in. Second, he talked about affordability. Third, largely, if I may say, and it might be a bold statement, this is a buyer's market. So understand when I see all these 3 points. Uh, Very important is the cost structures, right?
Right.
Uh, can we all afford certain tools, standardized tool? We don't because our clients do not sort of support that kind of a. So that's one side of it. The second side of it is uh, if I leave the say top 20% of our clients, rest 80% we are all sort of looking into where the budgets are small, where we are negotiating even in some cases 10, 15,000, 20,000 rupees kind of a thing. So, so does that allow us to sort of get into an additional cost of putting certain measurement tools which are important and things like those? Now, most important out there is ultimately, you know, in certain things, when clients start asking for certain things, you say, okay, let's not get into that argument out there and just make him happy by giving what he wants. Now, there are three different aspects to it. Uh, if I look at the client, if client looks for AVE and that is what has been considered as a inside benchmark, not for him, but even for his bosses. So I understand it's a chain, it's a value chain, it's a chain. So if that's what has been asked, you sort of not get into too much of argument out there, and you go with that. So that's one downside of it. The second downside of it is of course the cost structures. How many agencies today can afford the services of whether it's Impact, whether it's Concept BIU, whether Siddharth it's you, or Meltwater, or things like those, right? Not really. Are clients ready to pay outside of the retainer for this? Not there. So I think keeping all of those challenges in mind, this will remain until we sort of become, as a PRCI, we are working quite a bit. There is a measurement committee who's working, putting in reports. We are
Brilliant.
trying to popularize that with people around all the member companies and for everybody else. But again, the point is, as I said, it's a buyer's market. So that's one part. So that definitely, I think I'll just give me. I know this is a very interesting topic which I have raised right now, and I'm sure there will be some pushback coming in here. But I'm happy to hear that those points.
So we have
Now,
a buyer
the
with
other,
us.
So,
yeah.
Preeti, I think we should have the buyer's voice first. Yeah.
Vineet, you excited me with that question. That's why I couldn't stop raising my hand immediately. Um, you call me a buyer, you call me a partner. I don't know what. But frankly speaking, for me, innovative thinking from my partner agencies, or even for that matter, from my partner vendors, is what I'm really looking for. I might not have the budgets, but possibly I know for a fact that in my entire PR journey, apart from a PR agency, obviously measurement matrix, measurement tools are critical and important. We like it or we don't like it to justify my work. At the same time, media monitoring becomes an important aspect. How deep does the media monitoring also come to me? Are they research based media monitoring, or they just picking up clips based on the keywords I've given them, right? I would rather invest my dollars to say that X is an innovative tool that I'm really getting to ensure that my back end research, which is the basis for me even driving a campaign, like Siddharth said, is critical and important. At the end of it, the most important piece which leads to my objective is my PR measurement tool, right? So if I'm able to get a beautiful, say, bouquet in both of these, I would rather invest. Globally, I've actually seen this. A lot of the folks that I've been working with use this tool called Mudrack, right? I really don't know how well versed or how deep we work with it. Within my organization, currently, there are certain markets of us that really work with them, but we have still not graduated to that piece. So, just to your point, yes, it is a buyer's market, but if you bring innovation to my table to say that, hey, this is what you're going to get for the X number of dollars that you possibly invest in, I think the buyer is always going to give you a thumbs up, right?
Okay.
Unfortunately, sorry, Tarun. Unfortunately, what's missing is that every seller that seems to be coming to the table comes with the same tool.
Preeti, I put you in that top 20%, right?
Thanks.
Okay. So that's,
Yes, it does.
yeah.
I have just
You,
quick points. Before I get into the point, I think Preeti made in a very interesting thing about the international market. My experience, based on my experience of having worked in international data also, I can definitely say that India's current state of use of monitoring measurement data, we are way ahead than the standard that a lot of global markets use. We are way ahead. So that's, I think, it's a wonderful good news. And I'm also aware of, let's say, corporate communications team as well as PR agency teams where they have kind of moved beyond the typical media monitoring, which Preeti just mentioned in terms of सुबह सुबह clips आ गया, end of the day or end of the week में share of voice उसका count cover हो गया. But just one point in terms of AVEs, if you really were to ask me, my opinion on AVE is that today the cancer called AVE continues. I don't think the problem is with the agencies. I don't think that the problem is even with the corporate communication heads. The problem is that ever since the first 5-year plan, ever since the FMCG industry came into India and started communicating in India, FMCG started putting a set pattern of how communication should be and how communication should be evaluated. Now, so therefore, the problem is with the internal customers of corporate communication within an organization, because whether it's a CMO, whether it's a CEO, I think there is a lot of scope of PR or education that can be done. Now, whether it is done by PRCAI, whether it is done by an agency individually, whether it is done by Copcom groups, etc., I think the call for AVE does not come from a corporate communication head. I don't think corporate communication head खुद से बोलता है कि AVE को बेस करके मुझे evaluation दो. Call comes from the corporate communications internal customers. So I think the root problem is that can we orient our customers, the final customer, to say that, look, this is what PR does, and these are the new qualitative ways of analyzing, or this is the new unit of measurement. And I think I personally feel there's a huge scope in terms of educating the end customer. Now, whether it is done by the association, whether it is done by individually, that's of course the industry's call. But I think till the time we don't do that, probably we'll end up having this discussion for the next 10 or 15 years.
So true, Siddharth.
Just
And
to add, what Siddhartha is saying, see, AVE was great till the time traditional media, the print media was, prominent. Now, if you really look at our 80% outreaches in our digital space, even if when you look at traditional media, now that's where the biggest challenge what we are facing is, what do we say? Our story, we will never get those numbers out from the publication. So what there are tools, and then each publication has a different methodology to calculate your reach, your numbers, your viewership. So everything is becoming very challenging and it's unscientific by large. You can't give an online AV for an online story. You just can't.
Absolutely.
So I think we sure we are, and as an agency we are working very hard with our clients. Guys, this is not the way. I can't, sir, I can't tell you scientifically if this is 1 crore is what I'm saying is the right 1 crore. I'm sorry, it could be 10 lakh, it could be 5 crores, but I don't have enough data to prove that this 1 crore is the right 1 crore, and we're working really hard. And therefore, just to add on this whole idea, you know not all the work is for the masses. There are work where we're doing for advocacy, right? Wherein our key target audience is government. For that, the whole persona mapping for which department, which officer you need to reach out, and what is his preferences, and there even one article by right person would make all the difference. So I'm saying, it's one, of course, this whole idea of what you're working on, what is your delivery, and then what is it what you want to come out as the right way of probably the measurement and ROI.
Understood. So before we get into the education of the internal stakeholders, I'm going to take back the question, take back the conversation to a very interesting point that Siddharth made, and we have a lot of questions coming in for that. Is the primary research aspect that you spoke about, right? This is the ROO, the setting of those objectives, right? Return on objectives, which you spoke about, and primary research is a very essential component for that. One, how does one get started on it, and what does it entail? And if we do it, who fits the bill? Yeah, Siddharth, I'd like you to
Good,
answer, and followed by Preeti.
good to have a client also here, right? So, yes. So let me first define what can a simple definition of ROO be. An automobile company or a life insurance company issues a press release or a press conference and announces a new policy or a new version of a CNG car or an e-car, electric vehicle. What is the objective? Why we are doing the PR initiative? We are trying to create brand awareness, product awareness, right? We are not doing to create that that potha of clips or the thickness of clips. We are not doing that. That's not the reason why. We want the target audience to be aware of the brand. Now, this falls under the realm of primary research. Are people or have people got aware of this new car model or this new insurance policy which has come in? Now, this will need to set up a simple panel of target audience, and panel can be formed by by choosing a certain sample, which means that every time I as an agency or I
Hmm.
as a measurement provider sit with a client, anytime a client is briefing me about an upcoming announcement, it can be any
Hmm.
announcement, it can be an employer announcement, it can be an investor announcement, it can even be Vineet's point of let's say advocacy programs, etc., which can be very niche and which can be right. The objective is to say that how do we measure the outcome. Primary research is all about telling the customer or the client कि आपको outcome मिला कि नहीं,
Understood.
right?
So is
And
this
for
done
that
by
you need,
a
yeah.
research agency, or let's say a research wing of a PR agency?
Yes, so
How
there
does
are
that
three
function?
options. So there are three options available here. One option is that the PR agency who's executing the communication program, the same PR agency has an internal PR research or market research department, which does the study and gives you a pre and post. कि इस communication से did the needle move, right? That's
Right,
one. Second
right.
could be that the same PR agency, or more importantly, this time the client says that, look, I will not use your internal research PR agency. I'm going to use a third party. I'm going to use a third party market research agency, and I'm going to do a on ground panel study and figure out if there was a pre and post difference. Right now,
Okay.
in under this, there are two categories. Today, there are many market research agencies which have come up, which are doing excellent work at a much cheaper cost. Excellent work. Gone are the days that you have to directly go to a Nielsen and a Kantar, etc. There are very interesting work. Boutique market research agencies are doing a lot of work, and I think going forward, my personal take is that the PR industry now should encourage the growth of such third-party boutique primary research or market research agencies, because this is where we as a community, we as as communication copcom PR community, we are not just talking to one target audience, which is the customer, which typically what advertising does. We are talking
Right.
to 7 8 different audiences, so our dependency on primary research is huge and vast. So all the more then I think we should depend on that. So prices, actually I've seen prices come down by as low as half what you would
Interesting.
typically pay to, let's say the large brands that we've known of for so many years. Prices have known to come down by as low as half, even more.
Okay. Interesting. Preeti, how would you handle that?
Interesting, Siddharth, because I think for me in my journey, I've had the privilege also of working with a lot of international PR agencies, which have market research as part of the offerings for the client, right? Does that make it easier for me as a Copcom professional? Definitely does, because then it helps me evaluate each campaign of mine, right? Having said that, I think you touched upon one very important aspect, which is quality versus quantity. And I think somewhere that's where this whole phenomena of AVE seems to just kill the whole essence, right? Because we just seem to be sitting on this whole conversation of, okay, PR, एक press release issue कर दो, I need 150 clips. I could be a luxury brand which has nothing to do with a Apla Mahanagar or whatever publication, right? But I've got coverage over there. I'm happy with getting some 2,000, 3,000 AVs drawn out of that. How do you really measure the relevance of it? And I think that's where it's really important, that I agree with you that today I think we need to have market research as one of the components in the offerings, because if I have to just evaluate my campaign basis the AVEs, then a brand shift should easily happen. I'll give a small example without naming the brand. uh, is a brand was living in this whole crisis situation, right? Market share dropping, trying very hard to work around creating perception, more and more crisis erupting. They then run a sustained campaign, right? And what they do is they started evaluating it across platforms. While you start evaluating it across platforms and deep dive into the research, which a Nielsen or a Kantar, like you mentioned, really helped them do, what they realized was that the target audience that they're trying to focus on was not even looking at the campaign or the messaging, right? The advertising is what would catch the attention, and it would be just another advertisement for the campaign. Was it
Right.
addressing the real issue of, say, a ingredient or a product concern that the consumer had? No. And that's what really helped them shape the narrative. So
Hmm.
then,
Understood.
after a sustained period of 2 years, when they went back to look at the market share, 2% sharp rise. Why? Because that's the time when the sustained campaign was aimed at the consumer on that target audience in that geography with a certain set of media which really were the key opinion makers that actually helped these consumers, right? So I think it's important for us to have research as a backbone. I can talk of my current organization, and it's a fantastic journey that we've evolved. We do work with a lot of the larger research agencies like a Nielsen, Kantar, Bain, so on and so forth. When we deep dive into a campaign, even before the campaign is born, right, our market research is based on what my PR agency brings to me. Because if we have to propose a communications campaign that needs to deliver, it just cannot be ROI driven, or I can't just piggyback on a great advertising campaign that is created by my brand and just use PR as a side kick there, right? So I want to definitely be in the driver's seat to be able to tell my marketing team or my corporation to say that let's use a different lens. Let my agency, who's going to give you a campaign idea, not just from media perspective, from multiple stakeholders, like Vineet also touched upon, right? Government, another stakeholder. What are the platforms? What are the tools that are important for me? Today, it may not be important for me to engage with a government stakeholder through an economic times, but it may be more critical and important for me to engage with a government stakeholder through Invest India for that matter, because I'm directly liaisoning. I'm directly able to
Absolutely.
speak to them, right? So I think that's a very important aspect. And for me, I think market research sits at the center. It's the backbone of PR for me. And you can't just put it as another activity like this.
No, that sounds wonderful. You seem to have a very good ecosystem going. But Vineet, I'd like you to weigh in, with the current budgets that are available with the in the agency circuit. How much of this is possible? How much of this is doable? And what percentage of your client would possibly work with you to create an
So,
ecosystem?
so
And who fit who foots the bill?
yeah. So if you really look at the primary research is not new for PR. Means I've lost my hair, I've braided my hair doing that media dipsticks, right? Uh, Before you pick up a client, you have to have a media dipstick and say, hey, I found out that your previous agency has not even reached to XYZ and blah, blah, blah. And see, this is what. So, dipstick is not new to us, right? We have done that. We've also gone ahead and say, hey, we have spent 6 months, see how our dipstick has moved and how. So, all of those areas we have done. Now, honestly, Siddharth, when you talked about the primary research, there are three clients where we are either have done it last year or are doing it right now, a measurement through primary research, because nothing, and fortunately one of these clients is based out of US, runs a large foundation, have multiple stakeholders, right from students to skills to entrepreneurs to startup to MSMEs, blah blah blah. Now when you have multiple stakeholders, your media tools are same, your media platforms are same, how do you really define whether which messaging is reaching where? And we have just identified in fact last month only, because we're going to finish this year, so sort of looking at how we can show this, and that's where the primary research is coming in. Coming back to Taranjit's point, money, of course he pays. We've said let's do it once in 2 years and keep this budget out of it. And honestly, the budget is also, as Siddharth said, yes, it's not something. So for an example, we are looking at across around 400 to 500 respondents, and the budget is very very economical for us right now. So keeping that and making sure that in fact that would be an eye opener for us as well. Understand, we've been seeing the same data, we are saying the same thing. We've got 20 articles in Economic Times this year, we've got 20 articles in Dainik Bhaskar, things like those. But how much have read? How many people have read? Who are these people who are reading it? Are they reading it or not reading it? It's going to be an eye opener for us. So I think that's happening. But again, what percentage of clients?
Yeah,
Not even
that's the
5%.
question to answer.
Not even 5%. Not even 5%.
Okay. Siddharth?
You're on mute, brother.
Yeah, so I
No.
was just about to say the same thing, that the work that Vineet just described, that probably falls within 5 or less than 5% of what the industry is doing currently. I think all this of what Preeti mentioned, Vineet, what you mentioned, I think all of this can get sorted to a large extent if we bring in this discipline of account planning, right? Because in PR industry, when the entire dynamics of a client and the agency, the concept of account planning, and I would say even to a certain extent, one of the subsets of account planning, which is media planning, is missing. Account planning का काम क्या है? Account planning basically says this is my end objective, right? It sets the direction, right? And whether we are talking about multiple stakeholders at one single time, or we are talking about a specific stakeholder at one single time, I think the PR professionals, corporate communications industry, the PR agency industry, and I think there should be, it will do wonderful, benefits to the industry if we bring in the concept of account planning. Now, account planning could be done at an annual level, and account planning could be done at a quarterly level. Account can be done even at a specific micro campaign announcement level. It can be for micro announcement level. The moment you bring in account planning, the first thing that our end customer, and we spoke about the fact that I don't think the customer for PR and PR is really the corporate communication head. The customer of PR is the CEO and the CMO and the CFOs, etc. Right. So, and I think what corporate communication heads are doing is they are trying to help us, position the industry in the minds of the CFO, CEO in that way. I think the first thing that probably we need to understand is that the CEOs and the CMOs, they understand the language of account planning. They do not understand beyond a point. They do not understand कि कौन से clip आया, कौन से journalist ने लिखा नहीं लिखा, etc. They don't understand, and beyond the point, after we have left the meeting room, I don't think they are looking at us beyond tactics, right? I think the seriousness will come in once we start presenting ourselves under the template of account planning. कि okay, एक announcement करना है, या एक crisis manage करना है, या एक investor relations program handle करना है, या एक CSR initiative करना है, I will put it under the template of account planning. And under account planning, one of the acronyms which I personally use with my with colleagues and friends and clients within the industry is awesome, right? Awesome would be objective setting and objective meeting, right? That's the objective. Now the first part is difficult. Objective setting is not as easy as it sounds. What is the objective at the RO level takes a lot of time. What is the objective? What is the returns I'm expecting at the ROI level takes a lot of time. It doesn't come in 5 minutes. And here is where the involvement of the end customer of our client will automatically come in. And the moment we're able to establish awesome, right? And he says, okay, this agency, this Copcom is helping me achieve this. I don't think we will end up facing the same issue of budgets, which we have been facing for the last so many decades now.
No, absolutely. And you rightly mentioned, a lot of it stops at educating the end customer that we have on what we can deliver. Preeti, I'd like to
Tarun,
address this. We have this question coming in from one of our audiences as well. What would your advice be to somebody who would, wants to start this conversation or start educating their end customer as a Copcom professional or as an agency professional? How do they start this conversation?
it's so fantastic that we have that question, because while Siddharth was talking, I could really resonate very well with it, right? Having worked on the agency side and also on the corporate communication side, um, a buyer as well as a seller, right? The difference that we see. And Siddharth, to what you call awesome, I call that principle as wow. I call it the wow factor, which I really want to inculcate within my stakeholders. My end stakeholder obviously is the CEO, MD, the CMO, and the CFO. Do they understand the PR language? No, they don't. Do they know the journalists? They don't. They just think you're another BU that is dovetailing on something larger, right? Why does a CEO, MD or a CMO spend so much time with an advertising agency, right? They ensure that they're sitting on those tables on those meetings. It could be the creative briefing right up to the ideation. Because what they think and the perception that they have is that the agency comes to them with an account planning idea. Just to Siddharth's point, they come to them with a package of multiple things. Why don't they sit on the table with PR? When you finish a campaign, it said, okay, fine, my Copcom will look into the PR campaign. Why is PR the stepchild there? Because we are not selling ourselves as account planners. And I'm completely with you, Siddharth, on that. And I don't know if that really helps Tarun address the question. I think the need to give a bouquet of services is something that will involve the end consumer as well. Because today, if your MD or CEO is really going to see the value that you bring through account planning, which has various facets, is where they will start taking PR seriously. Today, I know of large
Absolutely.
organizations where PR seems to be the most important seat that needs to be there when it's a brand campaign, when it's a crisis, or whether it's even a corporate reputation CSR sustainability program, because they've been able to sell to the larger management the concept of account planning that Siddharth spoke about. And I think that's very critical. You work with a boutique agency or a larger agency. I
No,
think we need to
absolutely.
define the scope.
No, that's absolutely. So personally, in my experience, I've always made sure that PR gets that seat, right? Without that, I'm not entering the room. But for a large part of 2020 and 2021, we spent lots and lots of media space, AV space, talking about how PR has now got a seat at the table, right? Vineet, I want to hear from you. Isn't account planning a standard now in the agency circuit? Isn't that supposed to happen?
So yes and no both. Somewhere the planning comes in a place, but somewhere we become SOWD, scope of work delivery mechanism, just completing, making more greens in that dashboard rather than yellows and the reds. uh, and I think that's where this whole journey of account planning loses. Sometimes it's important to sit back and say, hey, this is not what we are supposed to do. Why are we doing this? Is it helping, not helping? And that's something which, and I can tell you from my experience, if I say operate with say 100 accounts, is it happening? Probably just 15, 20 accounts where we are sitting back, where we are sort of having more ownership and things like those. Rest 70 to 80% accounts, it's all SOW deliveries. End of the month, end of the quarter, you've got more greens, is what you look at.
Right.
And that comes to the measurement. Now, point of the senior management coming in place and looking at putting being part of those meetings and things like those. So there are a lot of in my sort of journey, I've seen uh, very very personal driven. There are people, there are CEOs who actually are very media savvy. They know the value of account planning. They know the I'm sorry, I'm back, I think, right?
Yeah, you're back.
Yeah.
Okay, we lost him there again. All right, we'll wait for him to come back. Vineet, can you hear us?
I'm back. Am I back?
Yes, you are.
Yes, Vineet.
Okay, my bad. There was a power, I think, went off for a while. So sorry. Coming back. So I think it's a very very individual driven. There are CEOs who are very keen into PR, and I've seen them even keenly looking at the monthly deliveries, key campaigns when it is planned, right from planning to the delivery. I have also seen them responding to WhatsApps of account director, responding to emails of accountants. So there are people who have their own way of doing things. So I think I don't want to get into that area, but definitely as an agency, I am with Siddharth. I am with Preeti on this. That we lose out on that particular focus of account planning. And if we are able to do that, probably, so from Siddharth's point, we have never looked into a measurement as a scope of work and then putting a cost part of a retainer. Why can't we do that? I mean, let's look at it. If it's a primary research needs to be done once in 2 years, once in 1 year. Honestly, a lot of my contracts are not annual; they are multi-year contracts. So I can very easily go back and put this in that, okay, we want to do a stakeholder audit, define a scope of work in 4 bullet points and say this is what we would do, and it's part of the retainer. We do those, strategic media training as a part of retainer. We do a lot of these,
Yeah,
additional services, and I think we can look at doing that. And I believe that's my takeaway from today's discussion is that why can't I at least start looking at that and providing that value to the client? Probably take it
absolutely.
our relation to the next level.
Siddharth?
Yeah, just to, in fact, while Vineet was speaking, I forgot to, I realized that I did not probably add in the last line that, the reason I brought up this topic of account planning and media planning was because when you look at today's theme, the topic theme that we're discussing, which is measurement and monitoring, if you have an account planning matrix and a media planning matrix in place, monitoring and measurement is basically nothing but a reflection of your account planning and media planning.
True.
So till the
Absolutely.
time we don't have that, measurement and monitoring is turning out to be a waste of time, and which is why we are going all over the place. So basically, measurement and monitoring helps you. So account planning and media planning helps you work backwards.
Absolutely, completely agree. Once you plan the account in such a way that all stakeholders have weighed in, and you're able to create a roadmap for the entire brand for the company, I think all of everything else would fall into place, right?
Absolutely.
We are into the last 5 minutes of our conversation. Last couple of questions, right? Could each one of you share your most preferred way of PR measurement that the audience can take back with them? One method that you would recommend that everybody accept. Vineet, we'll start with you.
Can I?
Yeah,
Okay. So I feel the best way is the word of mouth. Word of mouth, when we say the stakeholder coming back to the client or us and say, hey guys, this is good. And that means the primary research in this case. I think there's no better way to tell your client or your audiences that yes, it worked. There's no
absolutely.
better way.
I love the primary research idea, right? Siddharth? So-
To the word primary research, which is nothing but RO, focus on RO, returns on objective.
Absolutely. Preeti?
Completely with the perspective that Siddharth brings in, which is RO, because at the end of it, if you're able to meet your objective and make that shift, right, I think that's the most critical and important one for the belief that PR will also have going forward. AVEs and all, there are multiple tools available there, right? But if you're not able to achieve your ultimate objective, I think the PR campaign then misses the biggest part.
Okay. One tool that you would like, agencies to start using today.
I think more sentimental analysis because it's important for me as an FMCG company. Um, More and more growing need for consumers, right? Is possibly that's the right way of looking at how I can evaluate my consumers' interest within my brand if I do see a shift. And I think that's something which we are possibly missing. Possibly have not used that with my agency deep dive, but I think sentimental analysis is one aspect which really seems to be missing. And I think to Siddharth's point, it comes back to the same thing, right? While you research, sentiments of a brand or the way they're performing currently is always outlined. And if you're able to use the ROO terminology and then analyze whether there's a shift, I think that's another win.
Brilliant. Vineet, one tool.
So I believe we all need to move to all of these listening tools. Uh, and one of the biggest measurement tool which can work for various clients, and in this case, I can put 80% of the clients it would work, is a competition analysis. And I'll tell you how it works. many a times these companies are looking competition very, very closely, even if they are on the sitting on the top of the ladder. And as a PR agency, it's an eye opener for us. How can we do better if, in case, in few of the areas you're lacking? But apart from that, also that how closely and what is happening in the market, what are the sentiments, as Preeti talked about. So I think those tools will definitely really be helpful. And I don't want to take name of a particular tool. We all know these tools very well. This helps. The other thing which I personally feel is very, very important now again is this primary research. I think whether there's a tool and there are tools available for primary research, right? We all know all of those tools. So I think we should look at it very, very closely. We are already in a process to do a brand audit for one of the clients, and I think it works wonderfully well.
Absolutely. So, while we all know about these tools, it'll be nice for the larger audience today that if you can help them understand, your best tool for both of these.
So, okay,
You
all
can
my
name two if
friends,
you want.
yeah. So all my friends, we use meltwater for our listening, and I think we are happy. We use others as well, but so far meltwater has been sort of helping us big time. And we use YouGov for a lot of our primary research, and I think that has helped us a lot. Not in all aspects, all areas, but yeah, certain areas it has helped us quite a bit.
Absolutely. Those are both good ones. Siddharth, your best tool.
So today there are various monitoring and measurement tools available in the market. I think my recall goes with Concipio is definitely one, because what I've heard is that their market spread in terms of width and depth, the mediums, that the multimedia that they capture, etc., is much ahead of what some of the other service providers do. They are doing both quantitative analysis and qualitative analysis in a big way. In the digital space, in the online space, I think Mentwater certainly is doing a lot of work. I think a couple of agencies, of course, I must confess that I have not been in touch with. So there used to be this wonderful analytics agency called Germinate, which used to do a lot of work there. I'm not sure what are they doing now, but my personal experience has been fabulous with them in terms of the kind of qualitative insights that they've brought in for the clients there. Yeah, so I think these are the ones. But if I may
Uh,
just add one more point,
yeah.
is that I think there are two things which I would probably honestly request all the listeners of today's session, is that I think we should stop breaking our head in terms of count of articles. That's one. I think, and of course, that leads to the cancer that I spoke of, which is advertising value. Second part is, I think one of the things which probably the agency and the Copcom team should focus on, and I spoke about PR's impact on the balance sheet, and I can certainly say that we can focus on that. Let's focus on one simple data cut, which is corporate versus HR versus CSR versus product marketing. Am I being able to weigh the news themes as many of us know it? Am I being able to balance it every month, irrespective of client name, which is सिर्फ customer announcement ही करने को बोला है, right? That is where I think a lot of clients I've been interacting with saying that the agency is not very focused on balancing the reputation themes.
Understood.
Uh,
So you answered my question before I asked
okay.
that, but that's really great advice. Preeti and Vineet would like you to weigh in on the last question. Your advice to agency professionals, PR professionals in general, whether they are from agencies or corporate communication departments, on PR measurement.
Um, Tarun, if I can possibly give a perspective over there, is get out of the AVE drama. My experience and my journey has only taught me that though it's a tool which you possibly use, it also has its sidekicks or backdrops, right? It really does not help in certain times, because when you have certain smarter internal stakeholders, they could technically ask you to evaluate the campaign or the AVE basis reach, and also how many conversions happened, right? So I'm a strong believer who doesn't say that go by the AVE method. I think Vineet and Siddharth touched upon this element, and I'm a strong believer. Research is the big backbone, like I earlier said as well, right? Create an account planning mindset, and I think that's a winning recipe for PR professionals, whether in the agency side or in the corporate communication side. So that's my mantra
Absolutely.
for everyone.
That's very, very valuable advice. Vineet?
So for me, I think the measurement and the monitoring, everything starts from account planning, as it has been rightly said. And the biggest part of this account planning is innovation. Now, if you innovate, you can put that in your measurement, and that impact would be, no AV, no number of stories, no. I spoke about a very interesting parameters, trending 1400, versions. All of these are, again, if you really say, these are counting clips, right? This is counting conversations. What are we trying to do? Whether these conversations are important, not important, I don't think. But innovation does help. Say what was that innovation? If these five web mailers have gone, that is the innovation, right? It is a breaking news, probably the biggest breaking news happening on that particular day, on that particular. So I think that's something which is very, very important. Apart from that, I believe another thing which we as an agency and a PR guys should look at, while we do a mass outreach, we do get, and I was talking to Siddharth before as a chit chat, we do get a lot of stories. And for a particular client, half of those stories are not even useful. Those platforms are not their target audience. But what we do is, just to make sure our numbers as a strong numbers, we sort of put all of them together. See, we've got 100 stories this month, but the point is, out of those 100, probably 50 are not even right there in that, right? So why do we do that? Let's grow. Let's say that we've done this. This is what the real numbers, this is how it is. And even if you just want to get some kick out of that, say, oh, these 50s have come, but we know it's not of your use, so we're not putting in, just to get that kick. But idea is, be realistic, take things which, and I think grow up there. I think that's very important for us.
Absolutely. On that uh, note, I'll bring
Siddharth
this
has a point,
conversation
I
to a
believe.
close. Okay, last points.
Siddharth, you're on mute.
Oh, sorry.
Now,
So thanks, Tarun. I won't take more than a minute. So I just wanted to leave the audience with the thought that when we talk about measurement, one needs to keep in mind that a composite measurement service should ideally give you more than one benefit. The benefits are: number one, it should help the PR industry showcase itself effectively to the top management, and in the top management's language, not in the PR language. Number one. Number two is, it should be able to help you understand competition ka thought process kaisa hai. So which is competition intelligence, which is again one of the points which Vineet mentioned. The third part should be that the package should be able to give me an understanding of the media intelligence. Now, media intelligence is big for corporate communication and the PR industry. That what intelligence can I gather in the print industry, online industry, etc. Media intelligence is the third one. The fourth one, which personally is very close to my heart, is that a proper measurement should be able to fortify or strengthen the relationship between the client and the agency, which means it can be a wonderful tool to avoid divorces. So, and I
absolutely.
believe in that. I believe in this because, but the problem is that in many cases, I've seen that the corporate communication team does not share a measurement report with its agency in its entirety. Only a share of voice slide is shared. Whereas the details कि क्यों ये share of voice कम हुआ है, that analysis or diagnostics is there in the 7th or the 8th slide. So I would say that the PR, a holistic PR measurement report, should be consumed jointly by the client and the agency diligently every month in detail.
That's where your point comes, Siddharth, of making account planning the most important key piece, right? For agencies and corporate communications. Because I said it's not an agency, it's at the end of it your partner. And like you said, the marriage has to happen together or a divorce is bound to happen.
Absolutely. I'm so glad we have a corporate communication professional, an agency professional, and an expert in the segment, to help us have this discussion today. So, on this note, I will bring this conversation to a close. Thank you so much for joining us today. I mean, I thoroughly enjoyed this discussion. I wish we had another hour to carry this discussion forward, but we will continue this on our Facebook group as well as on all our digital channels. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Tarun,
Great.
for
Thank you,
having
Tarun.
us.
Thank you for having us. Thank you, Preeti. Thank you, Vineet. It was
Thanks,
lovely.
Siddharth.
Yeah.
Thanks, Vineet. Pleasure to be with all
Thank
of you.
you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Happy
Bye
Thank
bye.
weekend,
you.
everybody.
Happy weekend. See you. Bye-bye. Thanks
Bye
once
bye.
again. Bye.
So that was Preeti, Vineet, Siddharth speaking to us about PR measurement and how you can get started on it. I do hope you enjoyed this session as much as we did. I mean, I could have gone on for another hour, but I am keeping the time in mind. If you have more questions, put them in the comment section, tag the panelists, and they will answer them through the week. The conversation was, this was just a conversation starter. Let's continue to keep it going. Let's continue to keep it alive on this group. I know I want to. And all our episodes are simulcast on YouTube, so you can watch it there too. You will also hear more from our panelists on our blog. Let's talk, engage, and learn together and keep evolving the process of PR measurement. So we can continue this discussion on Facebook, on LinkedIn, Instagram, and Twitter. Yeah. Thank you for joining us today. Before we wind up, I will take a moment to thank my co founders, Sonali and Pooja, for driving this forward with me. Do join us for the next session next Saturday for another intriguing conversation. See you then.